the one with Rachel's book is a really brilliant episode of Friends. I feel like I've been saying that a lot about the last few episodes, but it's just a really good streak of episodes. This is the second episode of the 7th season. It's directed by Michael Lembeck, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And although with recent episodes, I've kind of been going through things chronologically because that made the most sense, I'm going back to routine and talking about the main parts of the narrative in turn. So I'll start off by talking about Phoebe and Ross, and then Joey and Rachel, and then Monica and Chandler. So Phoebe has asked Ross if she can spend a couple of nights at his apartment to give Monica and Chandler some space, some alone time since they've just got engaged, which is really sweet of Phoebe. That's really lovely. And while Ross is there, home alone, one of Phoebe's massage clients comes over. She's an attractive woman. She asks if Ross is a masseur since Phoebe's not there. He says, yes, I am, thinking he's going to get to massage this attractive woman, and that's not quite the case. He ends up having to massage an older gentleman, and he doesn't want to touch him, so he starts using objects, just random objects from around the apartment to touch him. And there's a really funny moment with Phoebe, but it's part of the discussion with Rachel and Joey, so I'll come back to that. That will be my last point on this. But I like this part of the narrative. I thought it worked really well. Very fun, very entertaining. Not too bad at all. Then we come to Joey and Rachel. The duck ate Rachel's face cream. And since the duck kind of threw up in Joey's room, he decides to go and sleep in Rachel's bed without telling her, of course, and he gets excited that there's a soft bedding and pillowcases. And then he feels under the pillowcase and finds a book. And he starts reading it, and it's about Zelda looking at the chimney, and it's a dirty book. And I did Google it, and apparently it's not a real book. Somebody on, I think Reddit, said they thought it was such and such a book, but the characters in that book are not called Zelda, so I don't think it is. I think it is just something that they created for the show. And Joey starts to tease Rachel. He's sweeping when she comes home, and well, she eventually finds out that he found her book. And the scene I love that I was mentioning a moment ago, when they're in Central Park, Joey happens to mention that he smells smoke. It must be Rachel's burning loins. And Ross kind of asks what they're talking about. They say nothing. And for a split second, I love this. The pacing, the timing, just fantastic. It seemed like Ross didn't know. And then he established his coffee was cold and asked if he could heat it up on Rachel's loins. And Rachel had a good comeback because Ross suggested she must have bought it after their relationship ended. And she said yes, because she wore out her coffee while they were together. And she leaves Central Park. Ross kind of runs after her and shouts, when we were going out, I read tons of porno magazines. And everybody looks at him. And for a couple of seconds, that's what we're focusing on. And then Phoebe comes in, and again, the timing is amazing. Phoebe comes in and says, Ross, how could you do that to an old man? Everybody else in Central Park hearing this, back to back, a lot of embarrassment for Ross, and it was brilliant. And we end this part of the narrative with Rachel coming home, and Joey is dressed as, well, he thinks he's dressed as a vicar. He's dressed as a goalie. I will say, I find it hard to believe that even Joey doesn't know what a vicar is. I feel like that's maybe hard to believe. But nevertheless, he's dressed as a goalie, and Rachel flips it around. She decides to come on to him very, very strongly, and Joey gets very scared. And it was a fun way to end the episode, so I really enjoyed that part of the episode. And then we come to Monica and Chandler. And I rather enjoyed it in the beginning when Monica and Rachel start planning things. They get out the wedding book, and Chandler kind of says, do I not get a say in this? Am I not part of the wedding? And Ross tells him that as the groom, all you need to do is show up and try to say the right name. I like the fact that he's able to make a joke out of that now, since he basically ruined his own wedding and marriage because he said the wrong name. And I don't agree with that. I don't. I feel like it should be a joint decision, the bride and the groom, or bride, groom, whatever. I feel like it should be a partnership decision. Maybe that's largely because people always say every little girl grows up dreaming of her wedding, and I didn't. I do actually remember after one time watching this episode, I did do a little scrapbook of what my dream wedding was like, but it was or what it would be like, but it was just going through the motions. I've never dreamt of this big white wedding and this beautiful wedding dress. I don't care. So maybe that's why I kind of don't agree that it should be all about the bride's decision. But either way, I feel like Chandler definitely needed to have his say. And Monica and Chandler go for lunch with Richard and Judy. I think it's been quite a while since we saw them, so that was quite nice. And they reveal that they kind of spent Monica's wedding fund. They bought the beach house. And then she started dating Richard, so they started to save up again, and that relationship ended. So they redid the kitchen, and there's no money. And obviously Monica's panicking about this. They worry she's going to have to wear off the rack. Like, again, I don't see why that's a problem. But maybe I'm just not the right person to have those dreams. And Chandler tells her that, well, he does have some money saved away. And he writes it down. And I love that as well. I like the fact that he didn't just say, oh, I have 10,000, 20,000, whatever it is. Because I feel like anybody watching it, if their savings weren't as big, or if their wedding isn't as expensive, it might make them feel like they're not good enough or they're not putting on enough of a show. So I like the fact that they didn't put a concrete figure on what the perfect wedding should be like, at least in Monica's eyes. And of course, Monica gets very excited. It's enough for wedding scenario A. And Chandler says no. And I love the fact that he said, I'm going to have to put my foot down. That might be the only time Chandler has ever been assertive. I was going to say around Monica, but maybe ever. And I love the fact that, for one, it's his money. They're not married yet. What's his is not hers yet. And he worked hard for that and saved for, as he said, 6 years. And if he doesn't want to put that all towards the party, as he keeps calling it, then he shouldn't have to. And they have a bit of a, not like a big fight, but definitely nobody's happy with anybody. And Monica then comes back in later on and she's been thinking about it. And she said, it's not fair for her to ask Chandler to spend all of that money on the wedding. And I don't know how I feel about this. I mean, I love it. I love that she came to that conclusion. But I don't know if I'd rather, she said, actually, now you've talked about it, I agree that we shouldn't blow all of our savings on a wedding. I feel like she still wants to do that. And in fact, that's evidence of that when Chandler turns around and says, I promised I would do anything to make you happy, so I want to spend all of this on the wedding. And she didn't turn around and go, no, you were right. Let's not go through all of our savings on the wedding. So she was still very happy to spend all of Chandler's savings on a wedding. Also, what about her savings? Does she not have anything? And that means that she didn't really have any growth or maturity because she still thought it was a good idea to empty their bank accounts to pay for the wedding. And I don't like that. But maybe it's in keeping with her character. Maybe if she'd turned around and said, actually, it's a ridiculous idea, let's just spend maybe half of the money, maybe it wouldn't be in keeping with her character. So I'm kind of on the fence with, I would rather she had some growth and maturity and realised draining your bank account's not a good idea. But also she wants the wedding. And I feel like that would be more in keeping with her character. So I have no idea. Basically, I don't know what I want. And then Chandler started to explain at Monica's prompting that he would think about their future and the house and the kids and the cat with the collar and the little bell every time it ran through the kiddie door. And Monica realised, well, she said, I want a marriage. And in that moment, we do have growth and maturity. So she hadn't got there yet, but she did get there. I still feel like maybe if Chandler had said, no, let's spend all of the money on the wedding, I think she would have been okay with it. I don't think she would have taken much convincing, is what I'm trying to say. But I do like the fact that she did get there in the end and realised that the wedding is just one day. And that your life together is significantly more important. And it's beautiful. And I don't know why I get so emotional when I'm talking about Monica and Chandler. I mean, I do know it's because it's a story that's beautifully told. They're characters that we really, really love. But I don't get this way when I'm talking about Ross and Rachel and discussing their fights and whether they were on a break or not. There's just something so perfect about Monica and Chandler. That's not to say I never get upset over Ross and Rachel, but Monica and Chandler are something else. And this is a beautiful episode. Personal highlights would have to be Joey finding the book, that was quite a good moment. The scene in Central Park, absolutely loved it. Phoebe coming in and making Ross embarrassed twice, absolutely loved that. Rachel coming on to Joey, I thought it was a really great performance from Jennifer Aniston, and just Monica and Chandler in general and how that developed. As I said, it's a really great episode. The one with Rachel's book is pretty fantastic.